most important thing about a trademark is that it can endure. A trademark builds equity over time. What we try to do is to capture something from the character or the essence or the overall feeling that should be appropriate to the company or organization that is represented. And so what we focus on as kind of maybe 3 basic criteria to judge a logo, a good logo, is one, that it's memorable, that it's distinctive, special enough to be remembered. 2 is appropriate, so that it's appropriate in character to the organization or company that it represents. So if it's in sport, maybe it's bold and dynamic. If it's in fashion, maybe it's elegant, that kind of thing, but really not telling a whole story, because it really can't. The other third criteria that we're always looking for in a great logo is that it's memorable, that it's distinctive and unusual enough to persist in the mind and be remembered. Often we say, if you look at a logo for the first time for a couple seconds and you turn around and you can draw it, doodle it for yourself, that means that it's a successful logo. Designing a trademark that is simple, memorable, and appropriate is not something that we invented now. And Ivan and Tom, when they established the company in the 50s, they were strong believers in those principles. And back then, it was all about working because it had to work in black and white ads in the newspapers. It had to work in different materials on building and signs on big buildings. And really, in some way, accommodating limitations in production. It's interesting to see how those exact same principles, and specifically simplicity, comes in so handy in the new realities of media world, where the logos are used predominantly on the internet, in mobile applications, pixel size, even in 16 by 16 pixels as a fav icon. So we're kind of excited to see that the same approach is actually working even better in today's realities. We teach a class at SVA, an identity class. So don't do anything before you have an idea. And certainly not on the computer. And that's because we feel that the easiest and the most effective way to bring an idea to life is through the hand. I mean, your connection with a pencil is so much more immediate. It's really easy to see that with a trial and error. So I explain often to my students that they will bring in something that they did immediately on the computer. And it's so easy to see how the pre-programmed functions of the computer were detrimental to the design. That, you know, and it's something that would have been very simple to create by hand, like a curve, like a beautiful curve or a wave, or even, you know, determining how the two shapes should interact. It's so much more immediate by hand. So we really do start most every design starts with a sketch, and even beyond that. So we will sketch something, we will scan it in, and we will trace the scan on the computer very carefully. And more often than not, you will have to do a few rounds of revisions and tweaking on that design. So even those will not be done on the computer. We would print out what we did on the computer, and on tracing paper, trace that and make the revisions by hand, scan it back in, retrace it on the computer, and so on, a few rounds. Their logo, you know, has been blip.tv. Whenever they discussed who they are, they would always say, we're Blip TV or blip.tv, which to us was interesting right from the beginning. And when we take on a project, we think of it holistically. We just don't just think about the visual, but the name is all part of it. So when we got into it, we also had some thoughts on the name. What we did promise them right from the beginning is that we're going to create something that can work with and without the word TV. We had a suspicion that we might actually kind of be able to shed this thing. We believe in simplicity and that principle of less is more, and we thought, something there felt like maybe we can just get rid of it. And when we actually got to explore designs and visual concepts, we really did feel the weight of that TV. And every time we try to do something memorable with a name, that TV was kind of stuck there and took the attention away from the kind of the simplicity of the visual, cluttered the visual. And really, a logo has to be simple. Our case was that blip.tv with the modifier TV is one thing, because then they own blip TV. But if they can own blip, just simply blip, though, that 4-letter word in the English language, that's strong, that's power. To make something simple that's also memorable is a challenge. And so when we were playing around with the word and really doing something that was inspired by the word blip, the solution that kind of was our favorite from the very beginning, and we did show some alternatives, was this solution that we came up with, which is first step is trying to find commonality between the letters that we were dealt, and that's always the case, and many times it's very difficult. Paul Rand said that he was just lucky when he was dealt ABC, because all of them had circles, and he just put them in a circle, and in some way, a lot of times you're helped by the name that you were giving. And this was the case here, because we found very quickly that the D and the P are exactly the same form upside down, and the L and the I are just straight lines. So in some way, we got lucky. The logo immediately became kind of a unit, but still, was missing that element that's going to make it distinctive, memorable, help it persist in the mind, and also tie it into the word blip. So we'll make it kind of appropriate to the name and emphasize the name. So that idea of just pushing over the dot and making it a little bit awkward, maybe, that just seemed so appropriate. It's almost something happened. We introduced a blip into the visual.